Before the foundations of the world were laid, before a single star burned in the heavens, there was only consciousness, the eternal I am. From this infinite awareness, all things came forth. And in this same awareness, all things live and move and have their being. You are not separate from that power. You are that power made visible. The I am within you is not a fragment or a shadow of the divine. It is the divine itself, clothed in the garment of flesh to experience its own creation. When you say I am, you speak the name of God, and every word that follows shapes the reality you inhabit. The world you see is but the reflection of what you have dared to assume yourself to be. Men search for power in the world, in possessions, in positions, in influence. But true power does not lie in any of these. True power lies in the awareness of being. To know I am is to stand at the center of creation. The riches you seek are not stored in banks or buried in the earth. They are stored within the treasury of your consciousness. When you awaken to the truth that I am is the source and substance of all wealth, you cease to strive. For you know that what you are conscious of being must express itself in form. The beggar and the king live under the same law, but only the awakened one uses it consciously. The power of I am is the power to call forth that which is not yet seen and to make it appear. It is the power that says, let there be light, and there is light. It is the eternal word through which all things are made. When you declare I am rich, I am strong, I am free, you are not merely speaking words. You are impressing upon the invisible the pattern that must externalize itself in your world. To misuse the I am is to bind yourself to limitation. To use it rightly is to live as a creator. Tonight, let us turn inward and remember the forgotten truth, that we are the operant power. We are not victims of circumstance, but the cause of it. The world moves as we move within. Whatever we claim in consciousness and feel to be true becomes our living experience. In this sacred realization lies the key to abundance, freedom, and peace. Let us explore now the 7 divine unfoldments of the I am power, the inner steps by which man awakens to his own creative authority and discovers that riches are not to be pursued, but to be assumed, for all that you could ever desire is already contained within the infinite. I am that you are. In the beginning there is awareness, and awareness alone is the source of all things seen and unseen. Before the stars were hung in the heavens or the oceans gathered in their depths, awareness simply was. You are that awareness. You are not the body you inhabit, nor the name you were given, nor the roles you play in the grand theater of life. Those are but garments worn by consciousness to express its infinite ideas. When you say I am, you are acknowledging your divine being, the eternal presence that existed before time began. Everything that you can ever imagine, experience, or claim as yours arises out of that sacred I am. To become aware of this truth is to awaken from the dream of limitation and separation. You begin to realize that all that you have ever sought outside yourself was within you all along, waiting for recognition. The I am is not a concept to be understood intellectually, but an experience to be felt deeply in the silence of your being. When you turn inward and rest in the awareness of I am, you enter the heart of creation itself. All things flow out from this awareness. The world you behold with your eyes is but a mirror of your inner assumptions, a projection of what you believe yourself to be. Man, not knowing this, blames others and circumstances for his condition, not realizing that his own consciousness is the cause. But once you awaken to the truth of your own I am, you cease to see yourself as a victim of life and begin to see yourself as its creator. This is the great secret that has been whispered through the ages, the mystery hidden in plain sight. The kingdom of heaven is within you because your consciousness is the creative power of God. When you declare I am and attach to it any state, that state begins to take form in your world. Say I am poor and you summon poverty. Say I am rich and wealth begins to gather around you, drawn by the magnetic power of belief. The law is exact and impartial. It responds not to your words alone, but to the feeling behind them. You cannot deceive your own consciousness, for it knows only what you accept as true. When you look around your world and see lack, conflict, or failure, do not condemn the reflection. Simply change the assumption that produced it. Withdraw attention from what you do not wish to perpetuate and turn inward to the awareness of your desired state. Feel yourself already in possession of that which you seek. This is the beginning of true mastery. The outer world bends to the inner vision, just as the shadow follows the form. You are forever choosing what to express by the thoughts and feelings you entertain. Every I am you utter, whether spoken aloud or silently felt, is a decree to the universe. Therefore, speak only that which uplifts, and dwell only upon that which ennobles. When you recognize yourself as the source, you no longer plead with life for blessings. You command them with quiet assurance. You cease to chase after riches, for you know that wealth is but the shadow of consciousness. You no longer pray as one in need, but as one in possession. You understand that your own being, your I am, is the infinite treasury from which all things come. When this truth takes root in you, fear dissolves. No longer do you look to others for validation or to circumstances for security. You walk in the still confidence of one who knows that nothing can be added to or taken from the fullness of being. You may wear the appearance of a man or woman, but beneath that garment you are divine awareness itself. This awareness is untouched by the rise and fall of fortune, for it is the source of both. Even when you appear to have little, the I am within you remains infinite and whole. To live from this consciousness is to live in freedom. You are no longer subject to the tides of fate, for you have discovered the law of life. The second revelation of this great law is the principle of assumption. To assume a state is to claim it as yours inwardly, to feel the reality of it before it appears in form. Every event in life is preceded by an assumption, whether conscious or unconscious. The world is simply the outpicturing of what you believe to be true of yourself. If you assume lack, life will faithfully reflect that belief. If you assume abundance, abundance must appear. The universe has no choice but to yield to the vibration you hold within. The law of assumption does not concern itself with your moral judgments or opinions of worthiness. It simply gives form to that which you accept as real. Therefore, to change your life, you must first change your inner state. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are living from the end. You must enter into the state of already being that which you desire to be. Feel its reality so vividly that it becomes natural to you. This feeling is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. To feel it real is to fuse your consciousness with the desired state. You cannot remain in one state of consciousness and expect to experience the results of another. To the world of sense, nothing may appear to change at first, but in the invisible, the law is already working. Just as a seed planted in the soil begins to germinate unseen, your assumption begins to unfold in perfect order. You do not dig up the seed to see if it is growing. You trust the process. In the same way, once you have assumed your desire, you persist in the knowing that it is done. The art of assumption requires inner discipline. It demands that you turn away from appearances and remain faithful to the unseen reality. Most fail because they waver between belief and doubt, between feeling the wish fulfilled and acknowledging its absence. But the one who persists in the inner conviction, who refuses to be moved by appearances, inevitably brings his assumption to pass. The world must mirror the inner state, for consciousness alone is the cause. There is no power outside of you that decides your fate. You are the one determining what will manifest by the assumptions you hold to be true. Every assumption persisted in becomes fact. To assume is not to beg or wish, but to know. It is a quiet, confident claiming of that which already exists in the realm of the unseen. You do not create your desire, you select it from the infinite possibilities already contained within consciousness. Everything already exists. Your assumption merely determines which reality you experience. This is the mystery of creation revealed. The riches you seek are not to be acquired, but to be recognized as already yours. When you assume I am wealthy, you are aligning yourself with that state of consciousness, and life will rearrange itself to make that truth visible. There will be moments when the senses deny your assumption, when the evidence of the outer world contradicts the inner claim. In those moments, you must remember that the outer world is past tense, the shadow of your previous states. It cannot resist a new assumption held with feeling and persistence. When you assume the state of wealth, health, or love, and remain faithful to it despite appearances, the old conditions must dissolve. The law cannot fail. The universe is but the mirror of your inner world. Therefore, let every thought that follows "I am" be worthy of the divine within you. When you say "I am rich," do not merely repeat the words. Feel them, live from them, see yourself already enjoying the freedom and abundance that wealth brings. Move, speak, and act as though it were already so. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the creative power. To assume the end and live from it is to call it forth from the invisible into the visible. Every desire is a seed, waiting for your assumption to bring it to life. You are not waiting for it to come to you. It is waiting for you to recognize it as already yours. There is no magic outside of consciousness. All miracles are natural expressions of assumed states. When you understand this, you cease to ask how or when your desire will come. You rest in the knowing that the law is infallible. As you persist in the assumption, the path unfolds effortlessly. People, events, and circumstances conspire to reflect your inner state, and what once seemed impossible becomes ordinary. To assume is to live as if the unseen were already seen, as if the invisible were already made visible. It is the divine act of creation itself. For to assume with feeling is to become one with the thing assumed. Thus, the I am within you and the law of assumption are not separate truths, but one and the same. The I am is the creative center, and assumption is the method by which it operates. Together they form the secret of manifestation, the key to all power, and the foundation of all riches. When you master the art of assumption, you master life itself. You no longer struggle against circumstances, but move in harmony with the unseen forces of creation. You become the conscious director of your reality, shaping it in the image of your chosen beliefs. The world bends to your inner command because you have recognized yourself as the source of all that is. Imagination is the very gateway to creation, the divine workshop of the mind where the invisible becomes visible, where thought takes on flesh. It is not a fleeting dream or idle fancy, but the living power of God within you, shaping the world in accordance with the images you hold in your inner vision. Every form that has ever come into existence first lived in imagination. The house you dwell in, the wealth you pursue, the relationships you cherish, all are but crystallized imagination made visible through feeling and faith. Man, not knowing this, dismisses imagination as unreal. Yet everything that appears solid was once unseen, born in the womb of consciousness. To imagine is to see beyond the evidence of the senses and to give life to that which is not yet apparent. You are constantly imagining, whether consciously or unconsciously, and by this ceaseless imagining, you create your reality. To awaken to this truth is to discover that your imagination is God in action. The creative power you once sought outside yourself lives within your own mind. When you imagine yourself as you desire to be and feel that image as real, you set in motion forces that must, by law, externalize that vision. The outer world is but a mirror reflecting the activity of imagination. You cannot escape your imagination, for it follows you as faithfully as your shadow. To imagine failure, rejection, or lack is to summon them into form. To imagine success, abundance, and love is to bring them forth just as surely. The imagination is not limited by time or space. In an instant, you may travel to any scene, assume any role, or claim any reality. What you imagine with conviction becomes your experience, for the universe itself is imagination made manifest. When you learn to use imagination deliberately, you become the master of your fate. You no longer drift upon the currents of chance, but steer the ship of life by the rudder of controlled vision. Every great change begins in imagination. You must first see yourself as the person you wish to be before the world can reflect that identity. Close your eyes and enter the inner chamber of the mind. There, in the stillness of awareness, construct the scene that implies your desire fulfilled. See it clearly, feel it naturally, and dwell in it until it becomes real to you. You need not strain or force. The power is in the quiet conviction that it is already done. Imagination creates reality through feeling. Thought without emotion is sterile. Feeling gives it life. When you feel the reality of your vision, when you awaken from that inner act as though returning from a journey, the outer world must conform, for creation is finished and all possibilities exist now. You simply select which to experience through the imaginal act. Do not be deceived by appearances or time. What you imagine with faith already exists in the unseen. You may not yet behold it with your physical eyes, but it is alive within the field of consciousness, moving steadily toward expression. Imagination knows no delay. It is instantaneous in its creative act. The time it takes for the physical world to catch up is but the measure of your persistence and faith. Many imagine briefly and then abandon their vision when results do not appear at once. Yet the wise persist in imagination, knowing that what is real within must in due time appear without. The world of senses is slow to reflect the swift movements of spirit, but it cannot resist them. Every image impressed upon the mind, when accompanied by feeling, must externalize itself in the world. When you use imagination constructively, you are aligning yourself with the divine nature. You cease to plead for change and begin to create it. The secret is to imagine lovingly, to use your creative power in harmony with the good of all. To imagine harm or fear is to turn your own power against yourself. To imagine beauty, abundance, and love is to awaken heaven on earth. The imagination, once disciplined, becomes the greatest tool of manifestation. You will find that life bends itself in strange and wonderful ways to accommodate your inner vision. People and events rearrange themselves with effortless precision, for imagination is the law of cause, and the outer world is but its effect. Feeling is the secret link that binds imagination to manifestation. It is not what you think, but what you feel that shapes your destiny. Thought is the seed, but feeling is the soil in which that seed takes root. Without feeling, thought remains sterile, a mere whisper in the void. But once clothed in emotion, it becomes alive, a living word that must fulfill itself. Feeling is the creative vibration, the silent language by which consciousness speaks to the unseen. The universe responds not to your words or wishes, but to the vibration of your dominant feeling, whatever you consistently feel yourself to be. You become, if you feel lack, you attract lack. If you feel abundance, you attract abundance. It is an immutable law. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. When you assume the emotion of already having what you desire, you are impressing that state upon your subconscious mind, the subconscious. Being the faithful servant of imagination, accepts the feeling as fact and moves heaven and earth to make it so. It is not concerned with truth or falsehood, only with belief. What you feel deeply and persistently, it must externalize. Therefore, you must learn to govern your emotions, to feel deliberately rather than reactively. The world is a mirror reflecting your inner feeling. If you see discord, do not fight the reflection. Change the feeling that produced it. To feel rich is to embody wealth before it appears. To feel loved is to draw love unto yourself. To feel free is to break every chain. Feeling is not a future state, but a present experience. You must feel it now, in the midst of seeming lack, for feeling creates the state, not circumstance. The wise man closes his eyes to the outer world and feels within himself the reality of his desire. He allows that feeling to saturate his being until it becomes natural. When the feeling becomes natural, manifestation is certain. You do not labor to make it happen. You allow it to unfold. Feeling is the energy of faith. It is the assurance that the unseen is real, that what you imagine with love must appear. Do not confuse emotion with forced intensity. Feeling is not a strain but a quiet conviction. It is the calm knowing that the state you imagine is already accomplished. When you enter that feeling, you enter the vibrational frequency of your desire, and the universe cannot but respond. Everything in existence moves according to vibration, and feeling determines the vibration you emit. Therefore, the art of manifestation is the art of feeling deliberately. To live as if your desire were already fulfilled is to feel it real, to occupy that state in consciousness until it becomes the only reality. The senses will eventually conform, for they are but servants of inner conviction. Feeling also determines what you continue to experience. Even after manifestation occurs, it is sustained by the feeling behind it. Change the feeling, and the manifestation dissolves. This is why it is vital to cultivate the feeling of fulfillment as a natural state of being, not as a fleeting emotion tied to results. Gratitude, joy, and love are creative feelings that sustain abundance and peace. Fear, doubt, and resentment disrupt the flow of creation and invite lack. You are always feeling something, and that feeling is always creating. The secret is to choose consciously what to feel. When you master this, you master life. The world will continue to present challenges designed to test your inner conviction. Appearances will tempt you to react, to feel contrary to your desired state. But if you hold fast to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, refusing to let outer evidence sway you, you will watch the world transform before your eyes. Nothing can resist the power of feeling aligned with faith. The great mistake of man is to believe that things must first change outwardly before he can feel differently. The truth is the reverse. You must first feel differently before things can change outwardly. Feeling precedes experience. It is the cause, not the result. To live consciously is to feel deliberately. It is to know that every moment, every sensation is an act of creation. You are either affirming the state you desire or the one you fear. Choose wisely what you dwell upon, for the subconscious accepts all that you feel to be true. Do not wait for the evidence of your senses. They are slow to believe. Feel now what you wish to see tomorrow. Live in the feeling of abundance, of love, of success, until that feeling becomes your natural vibration. Then the world, obedient to your inner command, will mirror that state perfectly. When imagination and feeling work together, nothing is impossible. The moment you imagine a scene and feel it real, creation is complete. It is only a matter of persistence before the invisible becomes visible. You are not creating something new. You are revealing what already exists in the eternal now. Every possible reality is already finished, awaiting your recognition through imagination and feeling. The universe is your mirror, consciousness is your canvas, and feeling is the brush with which you paint your life. To feel is to live, to imagine is to create, and to persist in feeling the fulfillment of your desire is to manifest heaven on earth. Persistence is the golden thread that weaves imagination into reality. Without it, the most vivid visions fade into the mist of forgotten dreams. Many begin the journey of conscious creation with great excitement, filled with the feeling of their wish fulfilled. But as the world of sense delays in reflecting their inner conviction, they lose faith and fall back into the sleep of doubt. Yet it is in those very moments when nothing seems to move that the greatest work is being done. In the unseen, creation is finished, but the bridge of incidents through which your desire is to be made visible unfolds only through faith and persistence. To persist means to hold fast to the assumption, no matter what the outer world may suggest, the senses may scream that nothing has changed. Circumstances may appear resistant, but these are but the echoes of your past states dissolving. When you stand unmoved in the conviction of your assumption, you align yourself with divine law, and the unseen begins to conspire in your favor. Persistence is not struggle. It is quiet faith in motion. It is the calm assurance that what you have imagined is already accomplished. To persist is to return again and again in imagination to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even when appearances contradict it. You do not try to force the outer world to change, for you know that the outer is but the shadow of the inner. You tend instead to the inner garden, watering it with faith, feeding it with gratitude, and protecting it from the weeds of doubt. Just as a farmer does not uproot his seeds to check their progress, so must you trust the unseen growth of your desire. The law of life cannot fail. Every assumption persisted in becomes fact. The only question is whether you will remain faithful long enough for the invisible to take form. There will be moments when doubt whispers in your mind, when circumstances appear contrary to your desire, but these are merely tests of conviction. The world is a mirror reflecting the sum total of your inner states, and like a mirror, it must first show you what you have believed before it can reveal what you now assume. If you persist in the new belief, the reflection must change. The law cannot be broken. You may tire, you may question, you may waver, but if even for a moment you return to the inner knowing that your desire is already fulfilled, you strengthen the new state. Every return is an act of faith. Every reaffirmation of your desire as real is a declaration of mastery. Persistence is not in the length of time you hold the thought, but in the consistency with which you return to it. When the outer world contradicts your inner vision, smile and remind yourself that appearances are nothing more than shadows of the past. They have no power to delay the inevitable unless you grant them belief. The law responds not to effort but to conviction. Persist not through strain but through surrender, by resting in the knowing that it is already done. Faith sustained over time becomes manifestation when you no longer react to the lack of evidence, when your inner assurance becomes greater than the voice of the senses. The unseen must unfold into form. You do not win this law through struggle, but through stillness. To persist is to be unmoved, to live in the end regardless of the beginning. The one who persists sees the invisible before it becomes visible. He walks in a world that others cannot yet perceive, but which he knows is more real than the transient world of facts. Facts change, but faith endures. You must learn to live from the end until the end becomes the only reality. This is the discipline of persistence. The seed of desire grows in silence, nourished by your unwavering attention. Every act of inner faith strengthens it, until one day the outer world bends to it. You will look back and see that every seeming delay, every test of patience, was but the universe arranging itself to deliver your desire in perfect order. The persistent one never doubts, for he knows that imagination creates reality and that no power can prevent the inevitable harvest of sustained assumption. And as persistence is the quiet force that keeps faith alive, gratitude is the sacred breath that gives life to manifestation. Gratitude is not merely a reaction to what has been received, but the recognition that all has already been given. When you give thanks before the evidence appears, you are declaring that your inner vision is reality and that the outer must conform. Gratitude aligns you with the frequency of fulfillment. It is the acknowledgement that creation is finished and that your I am has already provided all that you could ever desire. Gratitude lifts the soul out of need and places it in the vibration of abundance. The thankful heart is never empty, for it lives in the awareness that everything necessary for its joy already exists within consciousness. When you give thanks for what you desire as though it were already accomplished, you are moving from the state of wanting into the state of having. Gratitude is the feeling of possession. It completes the creative act by sealing your assumption with joy. You do not wait for riches to appear before you feel rich. You feel rich now by thanking the unseen for what is already yours. The law must respond to that vibration, for the universe mirrors your inner state. Gratitude is not forced or mechanical. It flows naturally from the recognition of your divine power. When you realize that every desire you hold is but your higher self calling you to express more of what you already are, gratitude arises spontaneously. You give thanks not to get, but because you know you already have. The grateful man lives in heaven, for his attention is fixed upon the blessings that surround him rather than the shadows that pass. He does not look at what is missing, for he knows that nothing can be lacking in the presence of the I am. Gratitude turns your focus from absence to presence, from desire to fulfillment, from doubt to faith. It is the feeling of completion, the inner knowing that all things work together for good. Every act of sincere gratitude strengthens the feeling of possession and quickens the manifestation of your desire. To thank life before it gives is to acknowledge your oneness with its creative power. It is to live as the giver, not the beggar, as the creator, not the created. When you awaken each morning, give thanks that you are aware, that you are conscious, that you exist. For existence itself is the greatest miracle. From that awareness, all things flow. As you move through your day, give thanks not only for the things you can see, but also for those yet unseen. For in doing so, you are calling them into visibility. Gratitude transforms waiting into receiving. It bridges the gap between imagination and manifestation by filling it with joy. The more you feel thankful for what is not yet visible, the faster it becomes visible. For gratitude declares that it already is. When gratitude becomes a natural way of being, you no longer feel the need to chase after desires. You know that they are already yours in the invisible, waiting for your recognition. You live in a state of divine sufficiency, knowing that nothing can be added to or taken away from the fullness of the I am. Gratitude is the vibration of divine rest. It is the song of fulfillment, the silent prayer of those who know their unity with the source of all things. When you feel gratitude deeply, you are in perfect harmony with the law of creation. You are saying, "It is done," and the universe echoes, "Yes, it is." Thus, persistence and gratitude are two pillars of the same temple. Persistence holds the vision steady, while gratitude fills it with life. Persistence keeps you faithful in the unseen. Gratitude keeps you joyful in the unseen. Together they form the perfect balance of power and peace. When you persist in faith and give thanks as though your desire were already fulfilled, you accelerate the manifestation beyond measure. The one who persists with gratitude cannot fail, for he has already entered the feeling of completion. He lives from the end, anchored in the conviction that what he imagines with love must appear. Through persistence, you hold the vision. Through gratitude, you embody the vibration. Together they make you unstoppable, for they anchor you in the truth that you are the source of all creation. The world may waver, the senses may deceive, but the one who persists in gratitude lives in unbroken harmony with divine law. He walks in peace while others struggle, for he knows that creation is finished and that his only task is to assume and persist joyfully. When persistence and gratitude become the rhythm of your heart, life itself bends to your will, for you are now living as one with the creative power of the universe, and the universe must always obey its own nature. Faith is the unseen hand that shapes the visible world, the silent power that transforms imagination into experience. It is not blind belief, nor is it the hope that something might happen. Faith is the knowing that it already has. Faith does not beg or plead. It assumes and rests. It is the quiet confidence that what has been conceived in imagination must be born in reality. When you live by faith, you walk in the certainty of things not yet seen, trusting that the invisible is more real than the visible. Faith does not look for evidence in the outer world, for it knows that the outer is merely the shadow of inner conviction. To have faith is to close the eyes of the senses and open the eyes of spirit, to feel the reality of the unseen so completely that it becomes the only truth. You know, faith is the bridge between your assumption and its manifestation. It is the invisible thread that holds the end from the beginning, the inner assurance that the law of consciousness never fails. When you declare I am and attach to it the feeling of your fulfilled desire, faith sustains that state even when appearances deny it. The outer world may seem unchanged, but within, the creative power has already acted. Faith does not rush, it does not fear, it does not doubt. It stands still in the knowing that the unseen is unfolding in perfect order. The moment you assume your desire with faith, creation is complete. What follows is merely the time required for the physical world to reflect that inner change. Faith, therefore, is not a struggle to believe. It is the acceptance that your assumption is already real. To live by faith is to live from the end. You must walk, speak, and feel as though your desire were already accomplished. This is not pretending or forcing belief. It is aligning your awareness with the truth that consciousness is the only reality. The senses will argue, logic will resist, but faith transcends reason. It knows that the law operates regardless of appearances. Faith is not dependent on circumstances. It creates them. When you hold fast to your inner conviction and refuse to be swayed by what you see, you exercise the divine power that moves mountains. You may not know how your desire will unfold, nor when, but faith never concerns itself with details. It leaves the how and the when to the wisdom of the unseen, resting in the certainty that what is felt as real must appear. Faith is the essence of all manifestation, for it is the recognition that imagination and reality are one. Every miracle ever recorded began as an act of faith, a belief so complete that the invisible was treated as fact. When you pray, believing you have received, you are living in faith. When you imagine and feel your wish fulfilled, you are acting in faith. When you persist without doubt, you are walking in faith. The man of faith does not need to see results to believe. He believes to see results. Faith is the divine law in motion, the eternal proof that your I am is limitless. When you awaken to the realization that faith is not something to acquire, but something to be, you enter into true power. You cease to wait for signs and begin to create them. You no longer ask if it will happen, for you know that in faith it already has. Faith is the living vibration of fulfillment, the sacred assurance that what you feel within must become the world around you. All that you have ever desired, all that you have ever sought, lies already within the boundless power of your own consciousness. The I am within you is the eternal source of creation, the infinite presence that speaks worlds into being. There is no power outside of you, no force greater than the awareness that animates your being. When you awaken to this realization, you cease to strive for riches, success, or peace, for you recognize that these are but reflections of the state you occupy within. You do not chase abundance. You assume it. You do not beg for freedom. You embody it. You do not wait for divine favor. You live as the divine expressing itself. The entire world is but your consciousness objectified. Every circumstance, every encounter, every event is a mirror revealing the state you are entertaining within. To change your world, you need only change your conception of self. You must claim within the quiet of your imagination the feeling of already being that which you desire to be. The moment you do, you shift the entire universe. For reality itself bends to the authority of your assumption. The law of consciousness never fails. It is perfect, immutable, and impartial. It brings forth in form whatever you hold to be true in imagination and faith. Many live as though they are victims of chance or fate, believing that life happens to them, not through them. But the awakened one knows that life is not happening outside. It is being projected from within. The I am within is the cause of all, and the world without is its effect. If you would change the effect, you must return to the cause. This is the great secret, hidden in plain sight, the mystery taught by the ancients, the truth whispered by the wise. You are the operant power. The creative force you seek is not in the stars or in destiny, but in the stillness of your own awareness. The riches of life are spiritual before they are material. To seek them outwardly is to chase shadows, but to assume them inwardly is to command substance. When you dwell in the feeling of abundance, abundance appears. When you live in the consciousness of love, love surrounds you. When you know yourself to be whole, nothing can appear broken. The I am is the key that unlocks every door, for whatever you attach to it becomes your world. Say, I am free, and freedom stirs. Say, I am rich, and wealth begins its motion toward you. Say, I am powerful, and power awakens within your being. The secret is not in effort, but in awareness. Creation is finished, and every possibility already exists within the infinite field of your own consciousness. Your task is not to make things happen, but to select and occupy the state of being that corresponds with your desire As you persist in that state, the outer world must rearrange itself to reflect your inner truth. This is the divine law, and it never fails. The moment you claim your desire in consciousness, it is yours. All that remains is faith, patience, and unwavering knowing. So remember always, you are not the one who seeks the power. You are the power. You are not searching for the I am. You are the I am. In this awareness lies all authority, all freedom, all abundance. As you awaken to this truth and live from it, you will see the world transformed before your eyes, for your world is nothing but the mirror of who you believe yourself to be.